So Sri Akal, welcome to Amma Brown Girl. My name's Amma. If you feel like you've been going through it recently and life has been beating you up left, right and center, I suggest you listen in on today's episode because I'll be talking about gratitude. If you don't already know, I've mentioned it on my previous episodes that being 24 was possibly one of the worst, if not the worst year of my life. I really struggled mentally. I hated my job. I was in and out of hospital, and it felt like it was one blow after the other. I called my best friend Jess some time ago just saying that I cannot wait to call you and tell you that I have nothing going on, that life is boring, that I'm happy, that I'm at peace. And that day was the other day, and I'm here to finally share that with you. Despite the difficult days, which felt like they were never ending, I felt like I was unable to see the bigger picture because I was so consumed by burnout, anxiety, poor health, the constant negativity. And I look back at that time with just so much gratitude. Obviously, I'm not glad that I went through those hard times, but somehow I got through it. But similarly, if you're going through a hard time, I'm not going to just sit here and tell you that everything's going to be fine and you don't need to worry, because that's some shit advice when you're going through a rough time. But based off my experience, what I can say is that's life, and life can sometimes be unfair. But the least you can do for yourself is keep showing up for yourself for whatever that might look like for you. Take every day as it comes, and please be kind to yourself. I had to ask myself what gratitude looks like for me and the importance it plays in my life, because I think it looks different for everyone. I used to think it's this big aha moment, but it's not. Something as simple as journaling or going to a coffee shop or watching the sunset or even sticking my head out every morning and feeling the breeze are a few of the things that make me feel very grateful to be alive. Also, side note, I think it really shows my age that I'm starting to enjoy things like sticking my head out the window and feeling the breeze and watching people and just, gazing outside is really like a whoa, I'm getting old, shit. I think sometimes you just get so caught up in life that you forget to be grateful for the small things. I think it's more about perspective, because when I was working in a job that I so deeply hated, my life became so heavily consumed by it because it got to the point I was taking work home with me, which naturally affected my stress levels, my relationship, my appetite, my health, all because I had the wrong perspective. A part of me literally forgot that I was 24 working for a toxic job that couldn't care less if I died and would have had me replaced in hours. But on the other hand, I was also very grateful to have a job, to wake up every day and learn something new about the property industry, to be able to help people, to have money and eat out and so on. And I genuinely enjoyed the job at times, but I don't know if that's a bad example. But I did find it easier to be more grateful when I appreciated the smaller wins rather than focusing on all of the negatives. I've been diving deeper into my past experiences, and one of the things that really stood out to me was why me? For a while, I felt like, why me? Why am I going through this? Why am I constantly struggling? Why does it feel like I'm constantly being shot? Which I don't beat myself up about, because if that's how I felt in that moment, then that's how I felt. And that's how I coped best with what I was going through at the time. However, when I shifted that why me to why not me, I gave myself even more grace. Nothing in this life can change what is meant for you, but you can change your approach, your perspective, and your actions. Rather than leaning into stress and anxiety, I just let myself feel and ride the wave rather than fighting it. Aside from journaling doing wonders, I really leaned into my community of friends as well. I learned to ask for help and be honest about my struggles. I also showed myself a lot of love through affirmations. I understand affirmations might not be for everyone, but it works for me. So I had a period of hating my body, and it was to the point where I felt disgusted looking at myself, which is so wild, but I understand it was as a result of my hardships. I had to remind myself that feelings of insecurity are natural, especially if you've gone through something drastic. Over time, I just had to start thanking my body for actually keeping me alive. And I made sure to take more pictures of myself and tell myself I look hot when I'm getting ready. It feels a bit cringe and vulnerable to say it out loud, because how dare I be insecure? I'm gorgeous. But I really struggled with my self-esteem being 24, and I'm glad I can look back with grace. But honestly, it's so exhausting being overly critical about yourself that there is more fun in falling in love with yourself. I've said it a million times on this podcast, but some of the gratitude practices I do is journaling. And if you don't journal, you're really missing out. It doesn't need to be detailed, but pen on paper does wonders. But this time I feel like I did things differently to practice gratitude, because journaling and solo dates just wasn't cutting it for me. Number one, I made sure to feel my feelings. This was the first time in my life I allowed myself to rot in bed for 2 weeks and cry my eyes out almost every day. I have never been the kind of person to rot in bed. I would rather deep clean the house twice than sit in my sadness or having to actually think about my problems. But this time, I actually allowed myself to heal. Number 2 was reconnecting spiritually. I am a religious person, but I just wasn't manifesting that much. I grew a hate towards my crystals because I felt like life was going so wrong, so surely they weren't working, but at the same time, they were just sitting on the side gathering dust. I then eventually cleansed them and suddenly life started to get a bit more easier. And I'm not saying that crystals are the solution to everything in your life, but they definitely amplify your manifestations. Number 3, affirmations. I've said this a million times, and if you're a consistent listener, you're probably yawning at this point with the amount of times I've said affirmations. But there is so much power in words, and what you say holds so much weight. I don't care what anyone says, but for me, I wake up every day and I thank God for being alive. I thank God for having a good sleep. I stick my head out of the window. I look around and I'm just like, oh, wonderful. This is great. I'm going to have a good day. Like, I thank God for having a warm bed and a roof over my head. There is so much to be grateful for. So I make sure to say it out loud because I feel like putting that kind of energy out gives it back to me and I automatically do feel a lot better. I want to bring your attention to recognizing and appreciating the small joys of life. I encourage you to have a mindset of openness and curiosity. So having a moment to pause, breathe, take in your surroundings. Sometimes I just wear my loop earbuds over music because I want to be more aware of my surroundings. I find myself smiling at strangers a lot more, especially struggling with my confidence. I went from being super confident to walking with my head down, shoulders slightly shrugged, and now I push myself to walk like I'm on a catwalk like I used to. Also, if you don't know what Loop is, again, you're missing out. This is not sponsored or anything. I wish it was. Sponsor me. They do wonders. I lost my first pair of earbuds and I could not live without them, but they're like these earbud things and they kind of help with the distribution of sound, and things feel a lot more calmer for me when I'm in like crowded situations. They've also helped with my anxiety because I don't really like crowded spaces, but 11 out of 10 would recommend. I hope by sharing my story, you feel less alone, and I would love to hear your stories about gratitude too. What are some of the small joys that you've realized in everyday life? How has practicing gratitude made a difference for you? Sharing our experiences not only uplifts others, but also inspires others to share. This episode is soon coming to an end, and I want to share some closing thoughts. I want to start by reinforcing that gratitude can be a very important tool when we're going through a hard time. I want to remind you that gratitude isn't about ignoring the difficulties in our life or pretending that everything is okay. Instead, it's about finding the moments of light amongst the darkness. Numerous studies have shown that individuals who practice gratitude have lower levels of stress and depression. There was a foundational study in 2003 by researchers Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough where they involved university students who were divided into groups where one group had to keep a gratitude journal for the week and the other had to note down their daily hassles. The study found that the students who practiced the gratitude journals had higher levels of positive emotions, greater life satisfaction, and lower levels of depression and stress, and those who noted down their daily hassles were the opposite. And that shows that gratitude can actually shift your perspective, and it allows you to see your obstacles as an opportunity for growth. If you're currently facing hardships, I want you to know that it's okay to feel overwhelmed. Life can be incredibly challenging, and it's natural to feel like you're carrying a heavy burden. My friend, you are not alone. Many of us have been there. And it's important to recognize that reaching out for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Whether you're talking to a trusted friend or a family member, or even a mental health professional, take that step if you need the support. Sharing what you're going through can be a powerful way to find relief as well as find a different perspective for what you're going through. Remember, you don't have to face your struggles alone. I also want to highlight that embracing gratitude doesn't mean that you have to be grateful for every little thing that happens to you, especially during a difficult time. However, focusing on some of the smallest aspects of your life that still bring you joy can be a nice way to heal. Each moment of gratitude can become a building block, which slowly helps you to regain your strength and hope. So as you go about your week, I encourage you to take a moment to breathe and find something that you are grateful for, even if it's something small. You are resilient, and even if you're having a difficult time right now, there are brighter days ahead. Remember, it's okay to take things one day at a time. Keep seeking support, and remember that you have a community here. I always like to mention to feel free to reach out to me if you're going through a hard time, or if you want to share anything, my DMs are always open. This episode felt very heartfelt, and I'm glad to share that I'm in a good place. I don't remember the last time I was this happy. I know every time I'm happy, the universe is preparing me for the next challenge that I have to come. So instead of feeling anxious about my future hardships, I say bring it on. And I know I will regret saying this, as I do every time, because there are moments in my life where I have been happy and I'm, praying or I'm just meditating and I'm like, oh, I wonder what my next hardship is. And I regret saying it every time when I'm going through that hardship. But then it's like a cycle that never ends because happiness comes in waves. You'll have periods in your life where everything is joyful, you're calm, you're stress-free, and everything's good. And then you'll have other periods where you're really anxious and stressed and low. But happiness isn't a constant state. It's something that you feel in waves. So when you are going through a period of happiness, be grateful for that time. And when you are going through your hardships, be grateful for the journey and know that you will cycle back to that moment of happiness again. What goes up must come down, and what goes down must come up. I hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode as much as I enjoyed producing this episode. I hope you have a good day, and I can't wait to post my next one. If you have made it to the end, I really appreciate it. And if you have any tips or suggestions for episodes, or if there's something you want to hear more of, do let me know. As I said, my DMs are always open. I thank you so much for watching. I thank you so much for listening. Thank you. Dhanyavad. Sat Shri Akal. Bye.